Hey guys, so today I'm gonna do something that I have not done on this channel before. So we are gonna do some tactics on chess.com. Okay, and so you see this is my current puzzle rating, which is not bad. And what I'm gonna do is instead of starting here with the tough problems, I'm gonna reset my chess.com tactics rating and start from the beginning and then build up my rating all over again. And as I do that, as we do the puzzles, I will share my thought process, and hopefully some of you can find that entertaining and even instructive. Yeah, so that is the hope. So let me reset the tactics stuff. Sorry about that. Okay, how do I do that? Reset rated training history. Okay, I'm guessing that is done. Okay, let's go back to puzzles. Okay, so it starts me off with a 400 rating. Let's get started. So black to move. So we can see first thing in this problem is that the rook guards this pawn. So that means this white king is totally boxed in. It has nowhere to go. So if you notice, the h6 and f6 squares are covered by the black king, and the pawn on g6 covers the h5 square, the pawn on f5 covers the g4 square. So with the king, when you see a king that's totally boxed in, you should immediately be thinking about checkmating opportunities. So here in this case, if I play pawn to h6, check, the king will have nowhere to go, and that'll be a checkmate in one. Okay, we got that right, and I gained 2 points because I took a long time to explain, but that is fine. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so white has just captured our rook, and the most obvious move is to recapture, which will be a check. So, when you're solving tactics, we should always look at forcing moves. And he's forced to block with his bishop. And when we take that, it'll be a checkmate since the knight will be guarding the rook. Yep, so this is checkmate again. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so we are white. Black has just captured on g6. Again, we see a king that is pretty open, and there is already some pressure around this king. So we can see the queen. Let's see if I can draw some arrows to help you out here. We can see the queen and the rook are lined up against the g6 pawn. So my eye is drawn to queen takes g6 check, and he cannot block with anything. So his king must move to h8, and then queen g7 will be checkmate. Okay. Okay, it didn't make us go through with the mate. Okay, so very desperate situation. Black has a rook and a knight and a million pawns versus I only have a queen and a few pawns. Now, good thing for us is my queen is in the vicinity of his king, and there is also this g6 pawn, and both the king and the g6 pawn, both the queen, excuse me, and the g6 pawn are looking at this h7 spot. So capturing this with the queen will be checkmate. Okay, so we have a situation where black has just checked us with his queen. So looks like we can take the queen. So only thing we have to figure out if there is anything wrong with that. So we will be attacking his rook when we take the queen. And also, yeah, I don't see anything wrong. So let's take it. Okay. Okay, so again, the white king is a little open, but if I just take on g3, he'll take back. I'll take rook takes g3 check, and in that position his king will be in check. He'll have to move the king, probably to f2 or h2, h1, one of those squares. Wherever he goes, I notice that rook takes d3 check will also be attacking this bishop on d3, which will be hanging. Okay, so yeah, I see that I can net the bishop. So let's quickly check if there is anything else. So when we are doing tactics, we should always look for, when we see a good move, we should look for a better one. In this case, I don't think there is anything better than doing this. So yeah, and I take the bishop that's hanging. So overall, I managed to win a bishop and a pawn. Okay, so we have a king and pawn endgame. I have 2 pawns versus white's 1. And so the most obvious, not the most obvious, but the first move that comes to mind is king g5, trying to go h4. But king and pawn endgames are very concrete, so we should not rush. Since I'm not sure about this, I should think about this. So let's think. So king to g5. Get the arrows out. King to g5. What does white do? White king must move because the pawn is stuck. So he may come forward with his king or go back. Let's say he goes back to e3. So king e3. Excuse me. Pawn to h4. Now I'll be threatening pawn to h3. So he probably will capture, and I capture. And then with his king being on e3, he will go to f2. And if I go to h3, he goes to g1. I go to g3. And that position will be winning for me because I have the opposition. So let's look at that again and see if there isn't anything else I could do. So also, in response to king to g5, white could play king to e5. So let's quickly look at that line: king g5, king e5. But then it looks like white is going in the wrong direction because my pawns will be promoting there, and he's coming up the board. So again, h4, threatening to take his pawn. So he's forced to capture. So h4, he captures. My king on g5 captures his pawn. Now my pawn is ready to run, and if you notice, he is outside the square. So if you don't know the square concept, whenever there is a race between a pawn that is trying to promote and a king that's trying to stop it, you can draw a square like so. I'm not sure if this makes sense at all, but basically this little square is the square of the g4 pawn. And with the white king being on e5, it is outside the square, so that should win. Let me think again though. Okay, so king g5, king e5, h4, g takes h4 check, king takes h4. Well, he moves, of course. He goes king to f4. Now he is in the square, so I cannot just run with the pawn. Now at that point, I have two options. I can push my pawn to g3, which probably is incorrect. King h3 is more, I think, seems like it should be the move. So king h3, he goes e3, king to e3. I go king to h2, and once I go to h2 with the pawn on g4, I control the g2, g1, g3 squares, and all I have to do is push my pawn. So I would win there. So king e5 definitely does not work. Let's review the king e3 variation again. So king g5, king e3, h4. Now, instead of capturing, he possibly could go to f2, but in that case, I think I would just play pawn to h3, and with the protected passed pawn on h3, I should be able to bring my king around and win the game. So king g5, king e3, pawn to h4. He takes my pawn. G takes h4 check. King takes h4. King f2, king h3, king g1, king g3. Looks like I'm winning. Are there any other moves I could try on this original position other than king g5? What about king e6? Taking the opposition. King e6, king f4, king f6. He could repeat with king e4. So it doesn't make sense to go king e6 if I'm just going to repeat. So king g5 has to be the correct move. So let's play it. Okay. G5. We have already decided what we're going to do. Yep. And it didn't make us calculate. Let's see. It had a pass rate of 59.2%. So, okay, we passed. That's good, I guess. And what is the rating of the problem? Only 570. Fine. But it's better to be sure than be sorry. So you see, I took close to 5 minutes on a problem which probably looks very simple. But when we are solving tactics, we should solve for accuracy because we are training the skill to be used in a real tournament game. So in a tournament game, if this situation were to arise, then let's say you have 30 minutes left on your clock, then it doesn't make sense to make an instinctive decision if you're not 100% sure whether that could, that'll be correct or not. If your incorrect move, loses you that half point and suddenly your opponent is able to escape with a draw, when if spending extra 5 minutes would have gotten you the win, it makes sense to spend that extra 5 minutes. So while training at home, tactics calculation, you should focus on accuracy and trying to treat it like a real game. I think doing that is a good way to improve. That's my opinion anyway. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next one. So first thing in any position, when we see a position, we should try to figure out what are the different tactical elements, the different tactical motifs, patterns that we see. So in this case, I notice that his king is cut off, meaning my rook creates a barrier on the second rank. So also I notice I have these two knights on f5 and g5 that could jump, especially this knight on f5 could go to e3 with check, and maybe this knight could also hop somewhere and join the attack on the king. Other than that, I noticed that he has a knight on c5 that is hanging. And my knight on f5 is, of course, under attack. So the most obvious move looks like knight to e3 check, getting my knight out of attack and also checking the king. So what other moves do we have here that could be interesting? So not moving the knight, well, rook b1 check will be a mistake because of king c2, and suddenly my knight on f5 as well as my rook on b1 would be attacked, so that we can reject. I do not see other forcing moves with the rook other than this check. With this knight, I don't see anything else. What about something like knight f3? Knight f3, I do not know what's my follow-up because rook d2 is not possible. The rook on d7 covers the d2 square. So knight e3 looks sensible. So knight e3, check. Now his king must move. He can go to either e1 or c1. Now let's assume he goes to c1, attacks our rook. Now in that case, we can take advantage of this hanging knight that we mentioned some time back. Play rook to c2 check. Notice that the knight on e3 protects my rook on c2. Wherever his king goes, I can take the knight. So that is at a minimum something available to me. But if he goes to e1, knight e3 check, king e1. Now I notice that my knight on e3 covers the f1 and d1 squares. That means his king literally has no moves, and knight to f3 would be checkmate. So looks like I can win the knight, and if not, if he goes to e1, I can checkmate him. Let's figure out if there is anything better after king c1 other than rook c2 and winning the knight. So rook c2 still makes a lot of sense actually. So rook c2, because my rook is in danger. Rook c2, yeah, king b1 would be forced. So knight e3, king c1, rook c2, king b1. And there, do we have anything else? My rook is still being attacked, but it's protected by the knight on e3. Bringing this knight over to f3 could be something, but that is not a strictly forcing move. And then we would have to calculate all kind of moves that white could do. So I think we'll start here and we'll make this move. Yeah, it has us continue. So okay, now if knight f3, what am I even threatening? I'm not threatening knight d2. Knight d2 is sort of threatened, I guess, but knight d2, if he does not take my knight, then king a1, I do not see a follow-up because knight b3 is not possible. The knight on c5 covers that. So I think taking the knight on c5 is the best we got. Okay. Okay, so white has just attacked our queen. But again, we notice a situation where his king is boxed in by his pawns, and also we have a lot of forces near his king. So queen g1 suggests itself. Queen g1, king h3, queen h1, and the pawn on g4, sorry, the pawn on f5 takes away the g4 square, so that is checkmate. Okay, next. Well, this at first, sorry, at first I thought taking the rook will be checkmate, but no, the queen on b2 defense. Okay, so again, because of the king being boxed in by his own pieces, we look for checkmating ideas. So queen d8 is the other forcing move, or the forcing check rather. So queen d8 forces him to block. So if I, oops, sorry, if I bring the arrows back, so let's see. So queen d8, queen d8. Now he has either rook f8 or rook g8, right? Okay, so if queen d8, rook f8, I can take his rook because it's not protected by anybody, and then he will have to play rook g8, which I can also take with the queen or the rook, and both are checkmate. So rook f8 doesn't work. I'll remove the arrows. So queen d8, rook g8 is forced, and there, yeah, I can just take. Okay. Fine. Let's go to the next one. Maybe we'll end this session once I reach 500. Maybe I need to play some the tactics a little bit quickly. I need to solve them quicker to reach there fast. But again, we are solving for accuracy, so I'll not speed things up. Okay. So I am black, and white has just played rook to c3. So my pawn, the g pawn, is going down. So if I move this pawn, he will take my rook. But I definitely can promote and make a queen. Do I have anything better? Also, if I play g2, he can try to stop my promotion, the pawn from promoting with rook c1, but then I have rook to h1. And if he takes my rook, I'll take back with and promote. But if he doesn't take my rook, moves it, then I'll anyway promote. If he goes check, I can go to, I have choices. Going to h6 looks a little risky because now I'm being boxed in. So probably I go to f8. Okay, this seems like this has to be calculated a little bit deeper. So let's think. Okay, so pawn to g2 is my most obvious candidate, and I think it's really the only move that makes sense. Moving the rook will give up the g3 pawn, so, and the g3 pawn is the only good thing that I have going for me in this position. So okay, so g2, rook takes h3, g1 queen. That should be clear enough. I think I'm not in imminent danger of being checkmated, and uh, I should be able to win that position. Okay, so g2, rook to c1, rook h1, rook c7 check. Oh, sorry, I had a brain fart. Rook c7 is not check, so there is nothing to worry about. Okay, there is a pawn on f7. Fine. Okay. Okay. So we have an endgame where white has a bishop and two pawns, two passed pawns which are split, and I only have a rook. So rook to e8, using pinning his bishop suggests itself, but I think we should go a little deeper than that. So he could play pawn to g7, but in that case I can take the bishop with check. He moves his king and bring my rook behind the pawn to g6, and if he plays pawn to b6, in that case I can take his pawn on g7 and I'll be able to control both the pawns. I think that works. Any other threatening moves after rook to e8? What if pawn to b6? I still go check, and I can choose which pawn I want to capture next. Fine. Okay, he didn't push any of his pawns, so we are just going to take the bishop. Okay, we are reaching our 500 rating goal. Okay, so a position where I do not have a queen, but black does, and I am down. Like I don't have a queen. Like I have a rook for his queen basically, and also he has more pawns than me. So fine. Is that true? Yeah. Okay. So again, this f7 pawn seems like it should give us some counterplay. So bishop g7 check, because we should always examine checks first. Looks like it is checkmate, because there is nothing that can block this check. My bishop cannot be captured, and the king has nowhere to go. Okay, 499. I was hoping we will. I was hoping that problem will push us over the edge, but no such luck. Okay, a position where we do not have a knight, but our opponent does, so we need to do something. And also, again, we see some pressure on the black king side. We have a rook and queen kind of lined up on the king position. Doesn't look like there'll be a checkmate. So quickly looking at rook takes g6, f g6, queen g6. Now if he goes to h8, I can check him on e8 or h6. Checking him on h6, he goes to g8. I can repeat the position probably. So let's see, queen g6. He probably goes to f8 now, because going to h8 means it will be a draw, but perpetual. So if he goes to f8, I can check him on f6. Now if he goes to e8, I can check him on e6, and that allows me to take his rook, which is pretty nice. Okay, I feel maybe there was an easier way to take the rook, now that I'm noticing that it's possible. Okay, so let's see again. Rook takes g6, f g6, queen g6. Now he can go to h8 or f8. h8, I think oh, I just realized queen h6 is not possible, my planned move, because his queen on d2 defends the h6 square. Okay. So queen f6 then, in that case. So king h8, queen f6. Now he can go to either G8 or H7. If he goes to H7, I can go Queen F7 check. If he goes to H8, I can go Queen F8 check, forcing him to go back to H7. So after King H7, Queen F7 check, King H6, Queen F6 check, King H5. Oh, sorry, I just messed up. Okay, so when the king is on H7 and I check him on F7, he comes up to H6. I can take the E6 pawn with check and take his rook next, and that should be pretty good because I'm getting his rook and 2 pawns, actually 3 pawns for my rook, so I'm winning 3 pawns in effect. And there is no immediate mate threats, but I think we should go deeper into the position a little bit. Also, as I'm doing all that, I feel I made a basic rookie error, which I would recommend that you guys do not make. I immediately started going deep into one candidate move, rook takes g6, without examining all my options. So this is a common error, by the way, that players tend to make. And I'm just now noticing that queen b8 is also a possibility. So queen b8, if he blocks, I just take the rook. So he doesn't block. He goes up to g7. That'll be more or less forced. And then queen h8 is mate. Okay, that should give us the desired result. And we have reached 504. I'm so happy that I didn't just blunder on that problem. Okay. So I will end this session here. Hopefully you learned something from my trials and tribulations, and I will see you all next time. Bye, and keep practicing your tactics.